we've got a treat for you right here in front of the stage. We want to thank y'all for hanging out with us here. Would you please give a big hand for world champion Allen Bach and Mr. Clay Tryan right here, brought to you by the Smarty Roping Sled. How's it going, guys?
Great.
Good, good. Clay Tryan, talk about your runs so far, buddy.
All of them or just last night?
Let's go with last night first.
Let's go with last night. The steer would not just I took forever. I would take forever in the box every night,
Right.
I swear. I don't like to, but I
Right.
have been. But last night the steer's head would not get up, and finally I just went with it. I was
Yep.
tired of sitting in there, which is hard here because the score is so short. If you do a bad job of scoring, you can look stupid.
Yeah.
You can either run by them right in
Right.
the chute, or they kind of get away from you. I knew my steer was probably going to run a little bit. He did the first night. Worked out good. I didn't handle him very good. They didn't miss him the first night, in the so he didn't get turned, and I kind of switched him out too far. And
Right.
I thought Jade about caught him, but
Yeah.
like he said, he didn't probably throw the best loop he's ever thrown.
Sure.
But we're still in the lead,
Oh, yeah.
second in the average.
Hey, man, you're in it for
That's
sure.
that's the only thing I've never liked about when you go to the trade shows. When you're in the lead, it's always doom and gloom, like everybody's catching up.
Right.
I actually got a bigger lead than when I
Yeah,
started, so
yeah.
I'm not, I think a little bit different. So I've heard that, but so I'm
Yeah.
still where I want to be.
One thing I've noticed that there's a lot of those steers that aren't standing well in that box, and it's not like it's the same pin of steers every single night.
Yeah.
Is it just happened to be that way, or?
You know, I don't know why that is sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a good set of steers.
Sure.
They're fresh. I don't know how many times they were roped before they
Right.
got here, but I actually think they're some of the best steers we've roped,
Right.
other than that part that they're doing. But they'll usually get up and get right.
Right,
so.
sure, absolutely, after a minute and everything. Allen, you've been here several times. As far as the team roping as a whole, as far as the guys going and the steers, talk about, what we've seen so far here at the NFR this year.
Yeah, I after competing all my life in the NFR or whatever, I kind of, I guess, ignored what people said and stuff.
Right.
And nowadays, like, I'm on the outside a little bit
Sure.
looking in, and I hear people's comments towards the team roping, every night. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, you guys don't really know
Oh,
how
yeah.
tough it is.
Right.
It's a really small arena. The steers are fresh.
Mm-hmm.
It can really, if you're not really cool-minded, it can kind of frazzle you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you guys noticed last night how long Clay had to wait for that steer to get right. I mean, that can unnerve you if you're not careful.
Right, sure.
So, I mean, you prepare yourself all your life, to being smart, and wait till everything's right,
Mm-hmm.
and then still be ready to get your swing up, ride your horse hard, and still stick it on the steer.
Right.
So I've seen lots of what I thought was great shots, like last night. These are bigger, fresher type steers, and if you guys really watch close, some of these steers will come around the corner like they're just going to hop, and then they won't take it. Their legs will be a little bit like less than perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And I seen some shots last night where them guys had really good position and still threw like such a really good loop that they pulled off some really good
Right,
shots.
sure.
And then the ones that you see them rope legs on, if you really look close and if you was to slow motion it down, it was like a tough shot.
Yeah.
Like Jade's last night
Right.
was a decently tough shot
Sure.
because he was not scared. He got great position, come around there, and it's like a little bit of an educated guess. Like, I'm confident, I can rope anything, I'm coming with it, and that steer could have just gathered up, but it wasn't, he didn't take
Right,
it
kinda
the
shuffled
very
a bit.
best.
Yeah.
So he was having to throw a perfect loop to catch him, which he didn't throw a perfect loop.
Right, right.
But
Yeah.
anyway, if you guys really watch like the close parts of you get to really appreciating it.
Right.
Turtle Powell, amazing to me right now. He's just nailing the barrier.
Mm-hmm.
His timing with his swing is great. And he's just hung it on like all three right there
sure.
in front of the chute. So it's neat to see guys that are in their game. And then it's also, for me, it's interesting to watch guys that are a little out of rhythm and then watch how they come unraveled or get put back together.
Right. You've always talked about timing, as far as healing, but you kind of touched on it there, the timing of the heading. You don't get to chase them very far down, and it almost seems like you can tell when they nod and how they score, how fast the header will be able to hang it on them. And I know this, I don't know if this will make sense or not, but it looks like, Clay, this is always an issue, the header getting into that left wall over there.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's happening more this year. he kind of touched on, is it because those steers aren't tracking out, on that first jump? It seems like it's an issue.
Well, bigger steers too. A bigger steer, if your healer goes one more hop, the hop is farther. It's harder for him to get the steer stopped when they dally. It kind of pulls on them a little bit, and all that helps. If this arena was 10 feet wider and that wall wasn't 10 feet tall and solid, you would see a lot more catches than you do. And then if the arena was even, not to mention that we don't hardly run them to the back, but if the arena was 20 foot longer, your horse it's a little easier for your horse to want to work. When it's enclosed like that, some horses, mine's been good every time I've rode him here, but they want to get a little bit tight, and that just gets hard to catch them. And heel horses, the same thing. Even a heel horse, like when we're roping the steers through before it starts, a lot of the heel horses, they don't want to go into the wall either, like if it's their first time there. So all of that contributes to it. But I thought last few nights has been good roping. Like 4-8 was maybe last night. And the night before, maybe 4 or 5 didn't even play. So
yeah, like a 4-3 or something was last.
But the thing to me with the team roping here is it's never going to be great, because like in the other events, it's kind of like bull riding. If you make a mistake, it's a buck off, right? In the calf roping, they mess up all the time, misstring them, but they still get a time. Bulldogging, there's only 5-6 good runs, and then they waller some of them around. But in the team roping, it's a leg, or our ropes, headers would never miss if we cut our ropes off right here. When you had to run close, but guys can throw it, and so guys are trying to win, and it's just part of it.
Exactly. I'm fixing to let y'all get to it. I know you'll ask for questions here in a little bit, and I already have a question. Y'all might just touch on it here in a little while. Clay, talk about for us younger, our newer ropers, I'm number 4, and handling steers. You mentioned it day before yesterday, the track of the steer, usually you want to go straight across the pen in a bigger pen. You are having to come up towards the corner, and that's not how it normally happens at a number 9 jackpot in a big arena, that kind of deal. So
well, here is because the fence is there, and you don't. And like a big steer, you can make your healer lose legs, or like Al talked about, like the legs get separated when you're pulling them. So if you're going across the arena here and there's a big wall and your horse ain't wanting to pull as good as he say it does outside, and the steer's bigger than probably normal that we rope, the steer's hops won't be even, and their legs will hit kind of off. If you watch it in slow, you almost got to break it down like I have, but they won't hit together. They'll kind of, one will hit faster than the other. So we've got to kind of come back to give us room for one, and then it helps us pull the steer where we can keep them hopping a little bit. Like you said, if I'm at a roping, I do come back a little bit, so I got the steer's head and I'm making his hops even, but I'm not coming back as sharp or as quick. But I always say in the handle, and I did a video, and I do believe this, the steer does, for the most part, like fresh steers especially, they do what your horse does. They follow the pattern. They're tied to your saddle horn basically, right? So if your horse goes down the arena, that's where the steer goes. If your steer comes back to the head box, kind of U-turns we call it in our world, the steer's butt will switch out way past his horns, and that's where he's going to come back to. And that's why, for me as a header, and I think why I've had good success with my healers catching over the years and at big ropings and stuff, is I try to do the same thing every time so they know where he's going. To me, down the arena means your partner's not going to catch 6 because he's going to lose a leg eventually. Coming back to the head box too much is going to kill your runs. You're not going to. You might be able to catch them a little easier to me. The healer might, but your times are too slow. So that nice pattern of right in the middle, I call it just a little bit past center. If you're going straight across the arena, or there's a big barrel beside you, you kind of step up and around and start gradually coming back. Towards the left corner of the arena. And I think that's what, as a header, if I can do the same thing every time, the healer knows that, and he can count on that. And I know it's not always going to be perfect, but
it's a starting point.
Yeah, there's a huge difference. I've healed enough in my life. Going down the arena on a fresh one, they're going to be hopping so fast, not catching 6 in a row, and coming back too much, we might get them caught, but the guy that did it right in the middle is going to run through us every time. I'm going to bring up one more thing, and then I'm going to go. But talk about your video. Usually wait to the end and everything. Well,
I want you to mention it.
I did a head and video. We talked about it at the end. But some of the things that me and Al will go over, it's just on the video how I talk about horsemanship and how I try to handle what I'm looking for, when I'm scoring and all the different things. Basically everything that has to do with heading is on it. I won't.
And they're right over here.
Yeah, right over there. Yeah, whenever we're done.
I'll let y'all go to it. I'll sit here for an hour if I don't go. So thank y'all for being here.
No, that's good. Like when you're sitting there listening to Clay, you obviously realize how important it is to have good information, good understanding of the run. Like I said, I've been here all my life at the NFR, and not everybody understands the run, you know, like as good as Clay does as far as the headers go. I have seen a lot of headers that when they rope, they quit riding their horse and come straight back. And it's kind of a nightmare for guys like me to heel them, because knowing that that's liable to happen, I have to try to get almost 2 jumps down the arena further to get out around that steer. But if heeling for somebody like Clay, knowing that he's going to pretty much go straight across the arena, I don't have to get as far down the arena with my position. So it's just all huge, just your understanding and then in the control of it. But what we were going to talk about a little bit is the different things that you can slow down and practice on with the Smarty. I've just been doing lots and lots of schools and training, and more I think people are realizing that speed is a big deal. Like if you can slow down and practice at a slower speed, you can consciously think about the things that you're doing. And for instance, I call it identifying where your weakness is with your horse, or you're identifying what's going wrong, say with your roping. Isolate it, meaning figure out a drill to do with it, and then practice it. And this would be an example of it. And Clay can kind of talk about it a little bit, but like for instance, when a steer, who all here heads? Okay. Do you ever struggle when a steer comes out and moves off to the right? Anybody? I mean, almost everybody I see, especially.
I mean, everybody does a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, Joel struggles with that. Almost every header does. Okay, well, what could you do to practice that? And what are 2 of the main things that you have to work on to successfully catch every time? For one, I'm just saying, like when you're coming out like from the chute with the Smarty, if you'll have the 4-wheeler driver like come out and then cut off to the right, down the right fence, and do that like 10 times, then you've got a repetitious way of thinking about moving your horse over and working on it. I'll let you go ahead and tell them.
Well, one thing I believe in heading, I talked about it here a few days ago, but you guys might not have been here. The best head horses want to go to the right, or you train them to go to the right, because that's the hardest move for them. It's natural for the steer to come over for them. They're in their left lead to move to the left, but it's really hard for a horse to step to the right in his left lead. It's not very natural for him to do. So I think that's the hardest move for him. So when I'm working on my best horses, or even a practice horses, or me, I like steers going to the right practicing. And even at times at home, I just tell the heeler, hey, you leave after me. I want him just falling over there. But it's hard to do that, to make every steer go that way. So I use this a lot to go to the right when I'm at home. And how I do that is I'll just usually come out, and to me the hardest move is for my horse is in like a steer going straight and then fading off to the right. So I will mimic that with the Smarty. I'll have the 4-wheeler driver go out pretty straight for a while and then just kind of cut it at a 45 to the right, and then I make my horse fall over there and get him. And to me, horses are patterned, and we're the ones that pattern them on how we ride. And so we need to teach both of us how to do it. I ride way better now, not as far as like I'm going to fall off or fall around the saddle, than I did when I was 20 years old, because I've learned how to use my motor skills, my hands and my legs at the same time, to make my horse go over to the right or the left if that's what happens. And you're almost teaching your horse and yourself to be able to push over to the right and do it. And Al talked about this earlier before it started, and I've done this. I've run steers, and it was a good idea. I haven't done it on the Smarty yet, but I'm going to do it since we talked about it, is just put that down. Don't even take it with you. It's amazing how much better you'll ride without your rope messing your left hand and your legs up. All you're thinking about is that and not your riding. And so I've actually, when I was younger on some horses, just worked on riding them to the right position. And it was almost amazing how much better they did without the rope and me messing them up on their back. But what it did for me is it kind of taught how I needed to ride, how I need to ride my horse across from the back of the box to the front, because that's where you catch up to the steer. And then out in the arena, it taught me how to move him around a little bit easier with my legs and my hand. And that's what I think is best about the Smarty, is You can work on your horsemanship, slow down. I like to rope it slow. I mean, I think fast is good, but I like to rope it slow a lot to really work on my fundamentals. So I can feel my horse and feel exactly what I'm doing and kind of make it become natural. And the other thing that Al, he said two things. I think the other thing is your, especially steers going to the right, is your swing. And if you have too tight a swing, a steer off to the right, that means his right horn's way over here and my hand is over here. So that's where I've worked hard on having a nice open swing, you know, covering the right horn when I'm swinging. So if he steps to the right, and say I'm in a roping, we'll kind of veer him off like this a little bit. We'll put him like that. So I'm going to the roping, and say I'm at the U.S. Finals or wherever, and the roping's getting pretty tough. And I even had one do that this year. I'm kind of pointed this way, and the steer kind of, you know, heeling barrier, some of them are going to want to go right. This is where you got to have a nice open swing. And what I'll do is I'll just make sure, I mean, I'll push my horse over there, but at the same time, I might have to be throwing. So if my swing was too tight here, I can't adjust. My momentum's going this way. It's going to be really hard to throw it over there and catch him. I might be able to get on him, but I could wave it off or have to take a couple more swings to get over there. But what I'm able to do with my swing, because I got it nice and open out here, I've almost got the right horn caught, even though I'm facing this way. And then it's a lot easier if my hand's already out here to just open up a little bit more and go get them. And when you're tight, it's like a full revolution, and it'll take the power off your rope, and you have to open way up to get them. If you're already in the right spot, which I think your hand to the right or a little outside your elbow, that'll help you go get the horns like that. And another thing I do as far as the right is...
Hey, can I interrupt you right here? You guys...
I'm going fast.
There's three things that you really think about. Where your tip is, like how high and low it is, how level it is, like the angle of it, and then what he's saying is like the breakover, like when he was referring to where his tip is, his arm being out wide, pull it in tight again. Like watch where, see how he's pointing the tip right here? That's why it hits behind the right horn a lot of times. Now swing normal like you want to. Now where is that breakover of that tip? See how it's over here? So that allows, if that steer comes over here, the breakover's on the outside of it, we swing right to left, he's still able to come around and catch that horn. Does that make sense? But watch for that. I mean, that's the key every time when I'm watching someone head, where the angle is, where the breakover is, and how high or low the tip is.
Yeah, and so that's why I think a swing, to me, is the most important part about roping the horns. I mean, it ain't so much your delivery. If you got a good swing, your delivery's going to come pretty natural out of it. If your hand's in too tight, if you're having trouble turning your rope over, all that's going to be a little bit detrimental to be able to rope the horns. But if I got a nice smooth swing in my hand where I want it to be, it's a lot easier to extend it out a little bit more. Or if he comes left, it's easier to move it in than out. The power will be easier to pull it across than to push it back out. And another thing that I do, because I know people, especially the lower numbers, because I've heard at schools, my heeler let them go to the right. Well, one thing I work on my horse is I rope the Smarty in a big right circle. And it's harder than you think when you do it. But two things it does, it teaches my horse to stay on the steer's left hip and follow him around. And I do this on my best horse, the one I'm riding here. I like to do it on him a lot. And the right horn is always fading away from you. So if you have trouble with an open swing, if you're a person that swings it in tight here, it'll make you open it up, or else it'll feel terrible. You might catch it a little bit, but it'll feel terrible. And once you open it up, it'll be nice and easy to catch the right horn, because the right horn when you're doing it is always kind of fading away from you. So that's one drill that I do a lot.
Have you guys ever heard of that right there? I had never heard of it. I've done 600 schools in my life. I've never heard of anybody going in a big circle off to the right. What it does, it allows that horse to stay in his left lead and learn to counter. I didn't even know what counter was for 20 years till Les Beau explained it to me. But when your horse is in a left lead, he doesn't necessarily like to laterally go to the right. It's against his lead, okay? But you can teach him how to do that. You can practice loping him in his left lead to the right. And then, but I thought it was really cool what Clay started doing was he actually started staying in position and having the circle go to the right to where he could keep that swing over there and keep that horse staying in the lane too. I mean, what better way of when a steer moves off to the right, have your horse stay in his left lead, but move over really good.
Well, and by doing that, your horse wanting to go, it doesn't waste time. And everybody wants to know, how to speed their run up. Well, I want to speed the run up without having to throw from way back here and all that little stuff to where if my horse is wanting to go to the right and the steer moves right and he just automatically goes there with the same speed he was going ahead, it ain't going to cost me much time at all. Where other people, steer steps off to the right, they go to pumping their swing and trying to drive their horse over there, and they're 8'2", and I was still 6'5", and it didn't slow me down a bit. Whereas if he'd have just kind of went straight and stepped a little into me and made it easy. And that's all the stuff I've worked on. And jackpotting, it's way more important than rodeoing because you got to make consistent runs and more than just one fast one a night, and it happens a little bit farther out in the arena. That's what they're designed to do. And so making your horse do the right thing, going to the right, to me is huge because of that.
I think in the low numbers, that might be one of the most important drills that you guys could do, because how many low number heelers are good at hazing and keeping the steer straight?
Yeah, well, and I think even me, because you go to the U.S. Finals or the Wildfire, the heeling barrier is as long, and I know at the Wildfire there's not much room to the right, but the heeling barrier is as long as the heading barrier, so he's going that way. I mean, they never go that to the left. Right. And at the U.S. Finals or whatever, the boxes are kind of pointed straight, but they got the chute just pointed off to the right like this with a heeling barrier. I mean, a lot of them are going to go a little that way.
Yeah, it's funny, like when you rope for a living, we know where all of when he's saying that, I know where all the catch pins are. It's like down there at the Wildfire, they're going to go a little ways straight, and then they're going to fall off to the right. Yeah. And that's where you notice the guys that have been working on their horses moving to the right, or U.S. Finals, or Guthrie, Oklahoma, or Salinas. I mean.
Yeah, the heeler's behind you at Salinas. You're in the same box, so everything falls to the right. And so that's one thing I've worked on a lot with my good horses that I ride all the time, because I think it's important that they do stay in their left lead. And I'll even lope mine, not all the time. I like to loose them up both ways, but I mean, out here every night I lope him in right circles in his left lead, just kind of keep him, because they all want to go left once you've rodeoed on them for a while, but keeping them going right is the hard part.
Okay, like you guys that are heeling, can you see where that would be also a good drill for us? Like I do this a lot, like say what I call a corkscrew. I thought I'll come out and have Tyler or whoever's driving, like come out from the chute, and I'll stay in my roping position over here, like 10 foot wide, and I'll just have him go in a big circle, and I'll go around this circle, and then as he comes out of the circle, I've had a chance to really stay in position. I can not swing, really think about my left hand, my leg, keep him right there. But then when I come out of the circle, sometimes I'll have him go straight down the pin, or I might have him go to the right fence to where I can practice having my horse laterally move to the right to keep that spacing. How many of you know that keeping your spacing is a huge thing heeling? I mean, so many times, that's probably one of the #1 things I see heelers do is they let their horse leak in. Like we anticipate, our horse anticipates. So it's a drill to where I can come out of this circle, have Tyler cut off down to the right fence, and use my left leg, keep my spacing, and still make a nice pocket and come in there and make a really good shot, even though the smarty was going off to the right. I do the same thing sometimes, come out of that circle, go down there and go to the left fence and practice riding a little bit higher so that I can get around one. Like these guys at the NFR, they have to be really good. At the minute you see that steer go to the left, you've got to accelerate and you got to get one more jump down the arena so you can get around one. Paul Eves did that really, really good last night. Did you guys see the rodeo last night? I mean, because I love roping, obviously. Like Paul Eves that steer stepped off to the left, and that steer was just a little bit like that, and Paul got his horse up there and just rode excellent position, was not too close. And then right when he got to here, I mean, he had a great shot. I mean, and that is all happening like so darn fast. I was impressed. And the steer wasn't the best legged steer, and he had great position and a good sight to be able to really see and place his loop right there. And they were 3-9 the last 2 nights. a guy like me, I notice the healers that are doing that really well, and you can almost tell how successful they're going to be. And the reason I say that, that's application to what you do when you practice. The guys that really don't practice this kind of stuff, you'll see them cutting in and slicing in here at the finals, and they'll be having to break their tip in there, and they'll be too close. And the NFR is not a place that you want to get in too tight. Maybe make a comment about going to the left and how many times people split their horns going to the left.
Yeah. I mean, me too. Like especially at rodeos, I hate them going left a little bit too hard, because what it does is it messes now the left horn is clear over here, right? Like if you're lined up straight and he comes in front of you, if you don't move your horse over in time, the whole left horn is clear over here, so that changes your angle. And that's why I think the horsemanship is key, to be able to move your horse over in time and then get, what I try to do, especially jackpotting. Rodeoing, sometimes you have to throw it just because you don't have time. But jackpotting, you usually have time to move your horse over, so if he went left, then now we're still going straight. And the hardest part is people want to quit riding once they move their horse over. Once you move your horse over, that's when you really got to push up there and try and line things out. But the thing I try to do if you don't have time, so here at a rodeo or jackpot, is that's when you're in your delivery, you've really got to, his left horn went from being to there to now it's clear over here, and you're still kind of going straight at him, where you got to really finish your delivery clear over there. But the key to me is, if you can read it fast enough, is be able to move your horse over in time to do it.
We'll talk healing here just a little bit. Hey, Joel, would you grab that blue rope? And a lot of people are asking me all the time about, again, where should your tip be? Where should your angle be? Where should your breakover be? Just start in lane 2. And let me interrupt you before you start. I'm always using this analogy. Lane 1 is straight behind the steer. Never want to be there. But a lot of people heading and heeling end up there because they look at their target and they ride towards their target. They end up in lane 1. You always want to be over here in lane 2, like a racetrack. Here's a lane, here's lane 2, and here's lane 3. But the more you can keep your horse's shoulders and hips in lane 2, the better. When he comes up there, look where he places his tip, his angle, and his breakover. And then I'll have him come out of the corner and show you. Now that's the swing that you should have when you're going to heel a steer. Now come out of the corner, like back. A lot of people mess up when they're dipping their rope going down the arena. They don't maintain their tip, angle, and their breakover. See how that naturally just flowed? Jade Corkle yesterday said something interesting. He goes, it's like you have it in your crosshairs. Like Joel has got the tip, the angle, and everything. It's just, he's already like one of those pilots that's locked on. And the tip, angle, and the breakover, he's got them in his crosshairs here, and he never loses vision of the feet when he's coming in. So all the way around the corner, that loop is ready to heel the steer. If your swing and your angle is right, you should be able to barely have your horse's head get out of the way, and you could crossfire the steer, if your loop is set up correctly. Go ahead and throw a few loops. Here's another thing that's asked quite a bit. And basically, I'm trying to put out good information for you more than sell anything to you. But watch Joel's delivery there. A lot of people get a little bit mixed up on the delivery. Our opinion on what the delivery is, that we're coming out of our last swing, nothing changes. We keep our hand right here. This is the top of my loop, the bottom of my loop. Whatever my hand does is what my loop does. A lot of people, when they turn their hand over too early to get their slack, they lift the bottom of this loop up, and that's why you get high on the right or inside leg. When you're heading a steer, why do we miss the left horn? We turn our hand over too early, and we turn the top strand down into the left horn. You split the horns. If you learn how to control your hand when you come out of your last swing, you'll be able to place your rope really good. Your loop is an extension of your hand. watch Joel's hand and watch how it controls that loop. All he's got to do to keep the bottom down is control his hand, okay? But he does have to control not turning his hand over and pulling his slack too early. Do you guys all see that pretty clear? Any questions on that? That seems like that's a huge issue or whatever, controversial. Anybody? You totally believe us, huh? Okay, here's the point I was thinking about when I was coming over here. What is it that you can do? You like identify, isolate, and practice. How many people and I've been doing this lately myself. I'll get in lane 2, and I've been doing this a lot. I'll get my swing exactly the way I want, my posture good where I don't lean over too much, and I'll practice seeing if I can rope it like 10 times really sharp, where I move up into my spot, take a swing, and rope it really sharp, get my slack, go the horn, to where it's exactly like I'm roping a live steer, say at 10 miles an hour. Get in time with my horse. His horse is the front leg, got my timing. On a live steer, your horse's front feet get in time with the back feet. So I'm practicing my timing. I ride up and I rope as sharp as I can, and I pay attention to how much loop comes through. What do I mean by that? If I sit down a little early and do this, I barely catch that left leg or get an outside leg. But if I keep my chin and my chest down like you would golfing, I'll get that tip through there, keep my hand in that position so my bottom stays down really good. And I see if I can't do that like 10 times in a row. And I just think that's huge for, if you want to go out here to South Point and catch 4 in a row, you ought to be able to do it in the practice pen 10 times in a row at 10 miles an hour, 12 miles an hour, do it 10 times in a row, 14. I mean, I'm kind of a realistic guy. It's like, save all the mental junk in the sense of, show me at 10 miles an hour, you can catch that 10 times in a row, get your slack, go the horn, horse don't cheat you. Now let's speed it up. Now let's speed it up until you're going like pretty fast and your horse is having to stop pretty hard, but you're still staying into your delivery. You're still not shortcutting anything. Is that making sense to everybody? I mean, to me, that's just common sense stuff. But it, for me, is like, how important is focus and concentration when you're out at South Point trying to win 100 grand? I mean, just not missing. I tell the boys all the time, we rope too good to miss. We shouldn't hardly ever miss as much as we handle a rope, and it's all up here. Like, so I've been that guy that I know even when I was a kid, I'd try to rope that thing 100 times in a row, even though I wasn't a header, just to see if I could do it. Shooting free throws. I still love to shoot free throws. See how many free throws in a row that I can make without messing up. I get to 15, I miss one, get bummed out, start over, work my way back up. Those are the type of things I think you can really use, like say the Smarty for or a sled for, is really slowing things down and asking yourself, how good is my last swing in my delivery? If it's good, shouldn't hardly ever miss. Then, for me, it's like I've isolated that, and when I go into a live run, and I'm working on reading my corner and coming around there, by the time I get to there, should I miss one? Like when you see Jade or Paul Eves, by the time they get positioned, their timing and everything is so good when they get to here, they're probably not going to miss one if they understand their delivery.
I think one thing good you said there is, notice how he said, catch 4 in a row, 6 in a row. And I don't think people realize, even at my level, I don't know how many people do this, but there's days I'll have a practice session on steers where whatever I'm going to run that day, I won't work on nothing, but the thing I'm working on is catching all 35 or 45, whatever I run. So I might, if he ducks his head, whatever, my goal is to catch every steer that day, and I'm just training myself to catch. It's way harder than you think to do that. But I think since I've done that a lot, I've just trained myself to catch in every situation, in every scenario. And I think you can do this on this too. I've had people at schools tell me, well, I can catch this every time. I'm like, well, good, you should be able to. And then, but you can work on different things, speeding it up, and then that'll just translate more to the steers. And challenge yourself to just be, don't run 40, I'm gonna run 15 on this and get my horse in good position, 15 on the heels, and throw good loops 15 times. And when you do that, it will translate to the steers, I promise you.
Yeah, you see, I don't know if you're really, getting into what we're trying to say here, but the revelation of it is most people will rope the dummy and catch every one. Then they go run live cattle, and they go to maybe 60%. Where's the methodical process in between? Like I was saying, now I know what speed is. I used to just grab a number, about 12 miles an hour. I really know what that is because we look down at the speedometer all the time. 8 miles an hour is about the slowest that a horse can lope, 8 miles an hour. But that should be about the easiest for you to think through and consciously see everything that's going on. You should be able to rope like a real high percentage, whether heading or heeling at 8 miles an hour. But then when your percentages are really good, challenge yourself. Move up to 12 miles an hour, 14 miles an hour. And now that I've done this a lot, I can really see where the horse comes undone and the header or the heeler comes undone. They'll go from maybe 100%, they'll lose, 25% of their catching just with 2 miles an hour. Yeah. Remember that day when we went, we actually did a video and went from 8 miles an hour to 22 miles an hour.
Don't do 22. Be hard on your smarty and maybe you. 22 is too fast.
Yeah, I heard somebody.
What was our number? Probably like like a good maxed out run, about 16.
Yeah, that's pretty fast.
It's pretty fast. And like I say, heading too much of anything is not good. So don't rope your horse at 16 all the time, and don't ride him at 8 all the time. Kind of mix it up, keep him guessing. And I know headers sometimes, just like steers, I score it when we rope it sometimes. I don't go every time. I just make my horse nice and calm. And when I'm roping at home, I get a walk and start sometimes. You guys know what that means out of the box? Like if I'm in the box, when it's coming by me, I'll just start off walking at a slow pace and just gradually kick into a lope. So what I try to do is, just mix everything up a little bit. And one thing I do in my house, you can do it both ways, is I actually work on my scoring on this. And I know people have trouble scoring. I think it's one of the hardest things you do. On steers, I practice scoring every run because my dad, I guess, when I was a kid said, pick a start before you're going to go and go with that. Try and see that every time. Not different, mix it up, but before you run that steer, one time it's going to be flank to the pin. That's where, the barrier hooks to the chute. And one time go tail around the end of the gate where you're letting them way out like you're at the BFI. But what I do at my house, I got two ways. If you don't have a box where you can go, at my house you can go around right by the chute, like you can go around the heel box and come through. And I'll actually have it, because the four-wheeler will actually be going pretty fast then, where I could see a hip. You can kind of see it off to the right of the chute, where I could see hip to the pin, and I'll go rope it. Or NFR, like I've gotten ready practicing for the NFR on this, where as soon as it went by the chute left, I went at it and roped it. And if not, I've built portable boxes at the end of my arena, where you just take a couple panels and you can simulate it going by you, and that kind of helps with seeing a certain distance and timing it right with your horse. But that's some of the stuff that I work on, so you can even work on scoring on it.
This is something that Clay does really good as far as handling a steer. Joel is really good at this. And to me, there is a bit of a misconception sometimes about how your head horse the move that it should make. Do you remember when Clay made that comment about when he ropes a steer, he pretends there's like a barrel out there and he rides around that barrel? If you watch the NFR the rest of the time, the guys that actually ride their horse keep their feet moving through their throw and their slack and their dally. They keep that horse's shoulder lifted up. They're going to place their feet like the best. They're going to keep the rhythm in the run for guys like me. I'm in time going down the arena, And if he can make this steer come around as smooth as possible, even though we're trying to be 4 flat, but the motor skills involved in doing that are more than people think. Most people, when they throw, they quit riding, and then they end up throwing the rear end around. But maybe explain that a little bit, Joel. We do that so much at the schools about motor skills.
What I was going to say is you hear a lot about people saying you want a rope, cross your hands over, and you want your horse looking at the steer. And the reason why we don't really want that is because if your horse has got his head to the right, he can really drop his shoulder. You know, so when we're roping, like I want my horse to keep his head straight through my slack and dally so he stays off of his shoulder. And it's like, but if he has his head to the right, you can't do nothing to stop him dropping his shoulder. And when horses get like that, they really start hanging, you know. I'm like constantly on the smarty, like trying to pull my horse's head to the left and even going past him sometimes, you know. But as far as to make a good handle, I think just when you get it on him and dally, you just want your horse to just lope out of there, not break a stride. Like a lot of people think about, like, oh, when I see his head, I really pull. I don't think of it like that. As soon as I rope him and get it tight, I just want to dally and let my horse lope out of there in that good pattern.
Kind of walk with the steer and kind of show the footwork that your horse would take with the steer. Like as he's roping the steer, his horse keeps moving like that, and then as he goes around the smarty right there, do you guys kind of see the footwork that a horse would be taking? Like imagine Clay tonight being 3'6". I can just about guarantee you that when he ropes, his horse's footwork is going to be somewhat just like that right there. And that steer's rear end is not going to whip out there like that because he's not going to let his horse go straight back up the arena. And what he said was like so good. Like, what happens when you come down the arena a little bit too much? Like, what happens when a steer goes not straight across but down the arena? What happens to his stride? Anybody know? What happens to his stride? Like, stride is everything to me. I'm a healer, right? I'm in time with this steer. What happens when he lets the steer's head go down the arena? I know that looks funny, right? Like, he double hops. The worst thing for a number 10 healer is I'm timed up with the steer's stride, and then the header gives his head back to him, goes down the arena. He loses the pressure on the steer's head, and he starts hopping fast. And a lot of low number headers do that. They don't quite pay attention to where they're going, and they do that. So what you're really trying to do is set your horse's footwork up every time. And like at our schools, we really work on the headers roping, dallying, going a couple jumps, separate the roping from the riding. And after 2 jumps, now I want you to just lope your horse out of there, look up. I want you to make the same pattern over and over and over. And if you do that, somebody's going to try to buy your head horse. I mean, it happens all the time with us, like say with Peggy. She'll rope and take time to get her horse set up, and her horse's footwork will do the same thing. So that steer, his feet will just come around and do the same thing every time. So it's not really like it's that complicated to handle a steer. It's that we've trained that horse to do that same pattern over and over. Does that make sense? And then you buy a horse like that, oh my gosh, he's easy to win on. An example of that is Chris Cox, horse got hurt, and Peg wasn't entered in the Perry de Loretto, and she had a sorrel horse we called Chico. And Chris is like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do about having a horse out there. I'm like, we have a horse, and you're welcome to take him out there and ride him. And he goes, well, man, I don't know how good I'll do on, just not ever getting on this horse. I'm like, I promise you, if you'll just get out of the barrier and catch, the horse will do the rest. And he goes, yeah, right. In a perfect world. I'm like, if you trust me, I promise you. So he was telling me the whole story. Well, they tried to talk me out of, 5 more guys offered him their horse when he got there, but he stuck on Chico, and he won 60,000 bucks. He won second in the deal, and he goes, you're right. He goes, all I did was pull my slack and get it on the saddle horn, and he goes, that horse took the same pattern every time. It wasn't no steering him around. He goes, you guys have patternized that horse. But we really believe in that. And I think, like, do you not do that even on as fast a level as you're working on?
I'm all about patterning them, especially the ones I compete on, and even practice horses. Joel knows this as much as anyone. When I have a practice head horse or a couple that I might reach on every time, but I've patterned them so much to not drop and try to get my rope that they won't even try to duck off, and I don't ever even go close ever. I might reach on 20 in a row, but it's because I've rode them right, and they know that I'm not trying to drop them out of there, and so I've kind of taken that theory to my good ones, because you do speed it up a little bit when you get somewhere. Like I listened to Al earlier, in my opinion, sometimes you got to over-exaggerate while you're practicing to teach your horse and you the right way to do it so it does translate. Sometimes you just can't do it. I don't practice like I do for the NFR on my horse one time that way. He's been here enough and I've rodeo on him enough. I basically just keep him freed up and just moving forward at all times. And once your horse has been around a while, he's gonna know to turn off. So I kind of work on myself, keeping him running, and him running just being free before I get here, or even all throughout the year, if he's a horse that I have rodeoed on and rode at a lot of different spots.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, do you guys hear the question there? And that's a great question. It's like towards the end of the week,
it's hard.
Round 6, 7, 8, how do you keep your horses free? Well, one of the answers is what he'd already said. Now, the guys that haven't really worked as much on their motor skills, like when you're letting go, you need to be able to let go, pull your slack, dally, but keep your feet moving. That's like patting your head and rubbing your stomach. It's a coordination, it's a motor skill. Like when Joel was little, when he's 10 years old, he wanted to start reaching, and I knew it was gonna be kind of turned into a fast sport. And I was like, all right, buddy, you can reach, but if you reach and duck, you can't do it no more. You've got to reach and go 2 more jumps, and you handle him good for me. We had a bunch of old slow steers, and that's where Joel got his start, is like, I didn't tell him anything about keeping his feet moving, but I knew that if I told him, go ahead and reach, dally, follow 2 jumps, I knew that he'd keep his feet moving. So like now he never reaches and ducks. He reaches as far as anybody. He can throw like 3 coils, but his horse will just keep his shoulder up and lope out of there. It's the same with Clay. He can just blow up there going as fast as he can, but he keeps his energy in his legs. But the guys that are out here that are letting off with their legs, let's say that steer's going 18 miles an hour. When they start their throw, that steer's at 18. Well, by the time they finish the throw, that horse is going like 12. And I mean, it's total separation, hard to get to the horn, the horse drops his shoulder. So the answer to it, I heard Clay even say the first night, I don't feel like I kept riding my horse as good as I needed to.
Yeah, and my horse come back to me. I kind of panicked. I felt like I bobbled my slack or something the first night. And I can't even really tell on video, but I just kind of quit riding and made sure I got a dally. And that's what you do sometimes. You just panic and you quit riding. But here's a little bit of a bad example, this rodeo right here, because the score is so short that you can get away with not riding as good. It shows up a lot when the score gets longer at rodeos during the year or at ropings. That's when it separates the men from the boys, in my opinion. Like the regular season and the jackpots are not even the same as this. This is like a different animal here. So you can get away with riding less here than anywhere else, but the score is not as short anywhere else than right here. So here's a little bit of a bad example, but even like you said, guys that'll get it will catch a few, but they'll miss a bunch. And the guys that are doing it more right are able to be consistent. And I've been on both ends of it. I've been here where I've rode bad and roped terrible, and I've been here where I felt like I did a good job, rode my horse good and give myself a good shot every time. And that's the years that I won, 90-some thousand, is when I got a good start and did exactly what I wanted to do as far as position and riding my horse.
Great roping is a combination of riding and roping. And a lot of the kids find that out, like, they start off just trying to rope really good. And you guys have seen there's some kids that just amaze you how good they rope. But you can only get so good with your roping. And then if you don't work on your horsemanship and riding your horse better, you're not really going to go to the next level. That's what we try to do when we're helping people with the roping, is help them focus on both the riding and the roping. And that was one thing I was going to mention before. What has been really good for me using the Smarty, I've been using an iron sled since I was a kid. I really believe in the slowing down, breaking it down thing. So the riding and roping is like, for instance, when Clay was hearing me talk about not swinging, like, what do I mean by that? If I was to tell you guys, okay, on this drill right here, I'm going to come out, move the steer off to the right. Whether you're heading or you're heeling, it's like, if you're swinging your rope, I'm asking you to not focus on your roping. I'm asking you to focus on your riding. But I might do that 3 times, but you still don't move your horse over. Well, then I have you quit swinging. Now let's give it a try. I want you to really think about your left hand and your feet. And when that steer moves over, I want you to move over and follow the Smarty. Then you do it really good. Why did you do it good when you wasn't swinging, and why did you struggle when you were swinging? Does anybody know the answer to that? It's kind of obvious that when you're swinging that rope, what are you thinking about? Roping. Like Jake always said, when we did a lot of schools together, me and Jake Barnes, but it's almost like God needed to give us 2 brains, one for our left hand, one for our right hand. But he didn't. So you have to learn how to program your subconscious to where you ride first, then you rope. Even at the NFR, trying to be 3/8, you've got to ride your horse out of the box, and you got to get him to the spot, then you think about throwing. But you got to start your swing, but it's not like I got to consciously think about this swing that first jump or two. I've got to program my subconscious through every part of this run to do some things to where I don't have to think about picking my swing up. I've been programming myself to do that. But I have learned how to switch my focus from riding to roping. Sometimes a person will be thinking so much about riding, then it comes time to pull the trigger, you were still thinking about riding your horse and you miss your shot. The most important time as far as consistency goes is that one tick of the clock when you're starting to pull the trigger. Everything in me goes to focusing on my target, seeing the feet, letting off, relaxing my arm, and finishing. The times when I think back at the NFR, some of the shots I've made, it was exactly at that moment of the run. When right in there I seen a steer do something, and I noticed it because I have trained myself to slow down and focus at that point. And to me, that's one of the keys to not missing, is being able at that moment in time. And I try to help people when they go into competition. Like out here, if you're at the South Point and you get up there and you start to throw, what should you focus on? Seeing your target, relaxing, and finishing with your delivery with your hand. And if you get really good at that, your consistency level will go through the roof. We're pretty much out of time. Anybody got a quick question for? Okay.
I personally, I like them. They got to slow down when I let go of it, but I don't like them rating too soon when I'm going to the steer, just because it takes too much time. So I like a horse that's running to right to the spot when I start to let go of it, and then the best horses are kind of out. You'll get a good feel for them. They'll slow down then. I don't want them running through that when I'm throwing it or gaining speed, but I don't like them rating too soon. So if I had a horse that rated a lot, I would probably like roping this rope and keep pushing him forward a lot. Try and get a little bit of that out of him is what I would do if he rated too much.
Well, I mean, that is a great, great question too, because again, us doing it all our life is like, depending on where you're at with your roping. If you had a horse, let's say like Al, he doesn't rate very good, but I really like this horse. Like Clay and I Joel, we'd have you practice coming up to the Smarty without rating off, and get ready to where you time your swing to where it's like 1, 2, 3, I'm ready to rope and I get my slack, to where I'm good at roping coming to the steer. I don't need my horse to rate that much because I love this horse and he's probably never going to be a big rater. And you learn to do that, that horse will be more valuable than the one that rates. Because the one that rates, he's going to be one that gets collected and the run slows down. And yeah, it feels a little bit better for you to catch on. And I'm not saying that beginner ropers.
Yeah, rate's good. I mean, you're just starting, rate's good. I mean, like if my kids are starting, I don't want their horse run. I want them running up there and slowing down a couple swings. So, like you said, depends where you're at.
Yeah, with
in
your
roping. I don't mind it. It's not a bad thing. If they're rating too soon and then you got to kind of push them farther to the steer, that's not any good to me. But if you're just starting, that is good. So it's a little bit of where you're at.
Well, even heeling is like, do I want, on a scale of 1 to 10, one that doesn't rate very good, or a 10, one that really rates good? Which would make me the best heel horse at the NFR? Would you assume the one that really watched and was the cowiest? It's not that way. It's the one maybe somewhere in between, like about a 5. He's not really super, super ratey, but he's got good enough concentration and rates just enough that I'm not having to bang on him to try to get him around the corner. And the same thing with a head horse, really. You want him to be able to watch and be cowy. And that's almost where I think that even the breeding, where they've got a little bit of thoroughbred into the cutting horse deal, it's made the perfect combination, you know, of rope horses. A little rate, but yet keep running. Are we out of time? Anybody else?
What was the...
Say that again.
Heel loop.
When you're delivering?
Swinging.
Okay. Okay.
Very good.
Do that for us, Joel. We touched on it, but it was just briefly. Right over the target. Right exactly at 12 o'clock. Like what I use a clock analogy a lot. 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. Just take your hand and break it over for us. Like, see where he's turning his hand over like that? That's 12 o'clock, right over the target, okay? Now back off into the corner. Like, say he's going down the arena. Where is he breaking that rope over? Same spot. That's where a lot of people struggle. They think that they're dipping it over here to the left, like dip it over to the left. Then they go ahead and walk into position. Well, now they're breaking their rope way over here at 10 o'clock, and they got to try to force it to go over here at 1 o'clock. And they're making their rope do something. You watch Patrick, watch Jade, watch Paul, watch the real Rich Skelton, like coming from the corner all the way into when they line up, their breakover is right over their target right here. Can you see that? Now go ahead and walk into it again. And what that does, that sets that tip and that angle up to where it's easy for him to just come out of his last swing. He's honestly not changing anything. It's a little bit like an airplane that bangs its wing. It's like going, let's say, down the arena like this. He's just his horse is just turning out from underneath his swing. You guys all following that? When I say, I've got my arm like this right here, right? Now, as I come into the corner, my horse's head gets out of the way, but my swing don't change. And a lot of people, because the kind of the misconception that I got to point it over here, that as they're turning in, they keep pointing it over here. And then now here's their shot. I'm supposed to be throwing it like right here, but I'm pointing it over here. My hand is in front of my face. Can't even hardly see because my elbow's in the wrong spot. When you're going down the arena, your arm position is here, and it stays here. My horse's head moves out of the way, and I've got my shoulder, forearm, and my arm right to where I've got good extension, and I can come into my delivery. Does that help anybody? Are we out of time? Good question.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, Allen Bach, Clay Tryan, and Joe Bach. Y'all give them a hand right here.
Thank you, guys.
That's brought to you by the Smarty Rope and Sleds. They'll be hanging out over there by the Smarty booth for just a little bit. If you have any more questions, go over there and check them out.